It is over. It is over. It is over in the second round. George Foreman is the heavyweight champion of the world.
Yeah, down went Joe Frazier. That was 1973 in Jamaica, and the great George Foreman joins us here on Big Board Sports. Hall of Famer, gold medalist, you name it. George Foreman, synonymous with that sport of boxing from back in the heyday, and we welcome George to our show here on Big Board Sports on ESPN Radio in Albany. Good morning, George Foreman.
Good morning, and thanks for having me.
George, we appreciate it. How you doing these days? Let's start with that. What's life like these days? Wait, now 68, George. How's life at 68 for George Foreman?
You know what? I'm having a good life. I have close to 14 grandkids, and I get a chance to deal with them. They're like ants when they're around here, and one is not on your foot, he's on the neck. So I'm loving that. Beyond that, I'm a full-time minister. That keeps me with the fire and brimstone. I'm having a ball.
George, what has happened to, what is, in your opinion, what has happened to boxing right now in terms of the heavyweight division? And certainly during your heyday, it was so popular, and I came to Albany in the late 80s, and Mike Tyson was very popular and loved to cover the sport of boxing. What has happened?
That's a strange occurrence to me. Such a good sport, was so great, so much money into the sport, and don't know what happened to the heavyweight. There are some pretty good ones around that just never was that. I don't think there'll be that much competition as it was in my day again, but there's still some good fighters around. Popularity, I don't know what happened to those guys. Where have the heavyweights gone?
Do you think it'll ever return to glory days?
I think so. Just waiting on it. If ever there's a good Olympian, Floyd Patterson won a gold medal. He was a middleweight, but he came back in and he made the sport so popular. Floyd Patterson. Then same with Muhammad Ali, coming back, made it popular again, coming all the way to the championship. Joe Frazier, all these Olympians. But if we get one good heavyweight that cleans up in the Olympics, I'm telling you, the sport is back on its feet.
We're talking with the great George Foreman here this morning on Big Board Sports. George, the popularity has turned to this MMA. I'm sure you have seen it. What are your thoughts about MMA? Are you a supporter of it? And I'm having a hard time making the transition because I'm an old school guy, and I like boxing, and I'm not a huge fan yet, but I guess I'm going to have to become one because it seems to be the talk of the town. What's your thought on when you see these guys in the cage?
It's something new. You know, I kind of admire that they started from nothing, put together a sport, a grassroots movement, and they've supported one another, even now on television. It's a great sport, and I think it's going to do it. It's nothing but grow. It's never going to take the place of boxing, though. It's not boxing. It never will become boxing. It's a sport all over on its own, and I love watching it. But I'm never going to try to compare it with boxing. You got to appreciate it, but you can't compare it with boxing.
George, Bryan sitting in with Roger here. Now, the biggest story going around sports now is Floyd Mayweather and him talking with MMA's Conor McGregor about their bout possibly happening in Las Vegas. Could you possibly see this fight happening to where Floyd or Conor would agree to go and make this huge billion-dollar boxing event happen?
Yeah, the part that this Conor McGregor, he's made a name for himself, and they haven't thrown a punch. No one knows who he is, how he looks, but he's made a name for himself just by challenging Floyd Mayweather. He should jump on this and do something now on his own career. Get up 2 or 3 other boxers, get them in the ring, and make it bigger. I think Floyd Mayweather is just counting his money, and he's not going to be able to come back right now. He loves being in retirement, taking his kids to school, having a good time. I don't think we're going to see that happen. I don't think.
What is it, George, about the MMA that people are falling in love with watching this? Is it because they're in this cage and it looks to be pretty violent at times? Your thoughts on that?
Oh, it's just like the first Corvette way back. It was just something nobody had ever seen. And then all of a sudden, it got competition, and everybody said, oh, I've got a Viper. But right now, it's the new kid on the block, and everybody should fall in love with it. It's new. It's something different. And hopefully they keep the competition even. They matched up evenly in the ring. I think it's great, great. Even the women are good at it. One of my daughters come to me telling me about, did you see the boxing match? The other girl wasn't ready, and she caught the other girl. I'm saying, what am I hearing? It's here to stay. It has fans, and for some reason, it's the darling of the day.
George, how much do you reminisce about your great career in the sport of boxing?
Oh, I love it. Sometimes I'm always asked about the Rumble in the Jungle and Joe Frazier down in Jamaica. People ask me that, and then all of a sudden the thoughts occur. But as a rule, I'm not in boxing. I like going down to the gym. I have a youth center where kids are always asking me to teach them this, that, and the other. And I'm not forgotten anything. I'm able to teach. So that kind of brings back the memories of the old boxing days. But other than that, I stay clear of it.
What made you so successful? What made George Foreman so great?
Hunger. I went into boxing. I came back. I didn't really want to be a boxer, and I graduated from the Job Corps. Come home to my parents. I said, man, I got to keep my two boys in school. I got to take care of my mom. Then I got to do this. And the only thing I could think of was to become a professional boxer. So I started fighting. And it was always to provide for the family. I came back the second time with the same thing. I was broke. Boy, I got to provide again. Now I had children and aunts and cousins, you name it. But boxing was, I'm so happy it was there for me. Couldn't have been any other sport that I could have gone in as high as I did with boxing.
What was your greatest win, George?
There were so many wins, but in 1968, I'm just a 19-year-old boy. I had never had a dream to come true, and I won a gold medal. I still wake up thinking, that's maybe a dream, impossible dream. That's the greatest win I ever had in boxing.
Do you see young boxers in this sport? Is there enough young boxers to get that sport of boxing off the ground again?
Believe it or not, there are enough boxers, young boxers around. And they are taught well, very smart. But then you got to bring in promoters and, of course, writers. Can't do anything without writers making dreams come true. They gave us names. Smoking Joe Frazier, the Louisville Lip, Big George Foreman. They gave us all these names. Now, writers they've deserted us, and there's not much to imagine anymore without good writers.
George, you had the famous Rumble in the Jungle with Muhammad Ali, and unfortunately we lost Muhammad Ali. Your memory of fighting him and his legacy.
Boy, I can remember fighting Muhammad Ali, and what I remember most is I was so tired. I hit this guy with everything. Then he screamed a few things in my ear. I said, I'm going to really get him now. By the time I was done, I couldn't breathe. And he hit me with the fastest right hand I never did see, but I remember hitting the canvas, waiting on the referee to say 8. So I jumped up. My whole life had changed. I was no longer heavyweight champ of the world. I'll not forget that. But more importantly, I had more years being friends with Muhammad Ali out of the ring. We loved each other. Can you imagine talking on the phone? I love you too. I said, what have life done? I miss the love of my friend. I really do.
George, one more for me, because he was from the Catskills, and when I came to Albany in the mid '80s, it was a lot about Mike Tyson. What's your thoughts about his career and really what it could have been?
Boy, was that a phenomenon. Mike Tyson. That was something that looked like had fallen from outer space or something. You just looked up one day and saw this little bolt of energy. He hit so fast, couldn't say he was so powerful, but he'd be in front of you shaking his head. Next thing you know, pow, in the temple. Someone is falling down. Didn't matter how big they were or how small. Mike Tyson was one of the greatest fighters of all time, but it could have been solid if he had only stayed active a little longer and not got into trouble. Infamous. I think that all the trouble he got into will outlive the greatness he had in boxing. That story of what happened to Mike Tyson is probably bigger than how good he really was.
Did he make a wrong turn, get involved with Don King back in the day?
Don King was a great promoter. You know, I dealt with Don King a lot. He always paid me, of course, letters of credit. I had all my money in the bank before I did get on any airplane. And but that's all you want from a promoter. These promoters can't be your counselor. They can't be your mom and your dad. And you hit that hard, you ought to have good sense. Cus D'Amato, what a wonderful man he had been to Mike Tyson. If he'd only lived another 10 years, I think that Mike would have been a great man. And he's a great man today, but a greater man for boxing.
And he had a good trainer, George, back in those days, too. It was in Kevin Rooney.
Yeah, and he made everything work. It was like greasing and all in a perfect machine with Kevin Rooney. Man, if only that love affair had continued and they'd stayed together, it would have been a good thing for boxing. But that's the story of Mike Tyson.
George Foreman, can't thank you enough for popping on for a few minutes. You sound like you're in a really good place with your life, and health is all good. And I love hearing you tell the stories about your glory days, and we certainly appreciate a few minutes here in Albany.
Thank you so much. The only thing I miss is I can't eat everything I want anymore. It's like, don't eat that. My wife, you shouldn't eat that. Oh, ho, ho.
You're still cooking a little bit, aren't you, George?
I cook and everything, but I can't wait for my family to come over and say, let me cook you this, let me cook you that. But man, can you imagine I'm tearing up tofu now.
Tofu?
No, I can't imagine that, George, to be honest with you. Hey, I appreciate a few minutes. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me. Goodbye and God bless.
See you now.